Welcome to the Social Chameleon Show, where it's our goal to help you learn, grow, and transform into the person you want to become. Today, we have a truly inspiring guest, Alicia Rickman, a passionate entrepreneur with a vision. Alicia is a friend of mine, and she runs a circus center here in Arizona. And it was a pleasure to talk with her. Alicia is not just a storyteller and influencer. She's a catalyst for engagement, inspiration, and true unity. Her journey in the world of business and personal development has been her orchestrating special events, crafting brand identities, and designing strategic marketing plans, both nationally and internationally. Her entrepreneurial spirit has been a guiding force throughout her life. A noticeable gap here in the Phoenix area in high-level circus training inspired her to not transform from a passionate advocate to a small business owner. With over a decade of experience in the event and circus industry, Alicia is now the co-founder of what is currently known as the Arizona Circus Center. In September of 2022, they purchased that business. The Arizona Circus Center is more than just a training facility, is a vibrant hub for creativity and growth. Alicia's dedication and the staff there, and Brent, the other co-owner, to excellence is evident in every aspect of the center. In just a very few short years, they've introduced a range of initiatives, including youth camps, performance tracks, student showcases, open stage. It's kind of like an open mic, but for aerial type things. And the center's full-scale circus productions highlight its dynamic and energetic environment. Alicia's connection to the circus art goes beyond her professional achievements. As a skilled hand-to-hand artist, she continues to train, perform, and share her experience in tumbling, handstands, and hand-to-hand with her students. Her personal involvement in the community is a testament to her passion and serves as a powerful source for inspiration for those she coaches. This is a great story. We were able to get into what it's like owning a circus center, how she got into it. She had a devastating ACL injury. She talks through that, what that's like, what she's learned, and it also kind of find out she's now become a bit of an expert in having a reconstructed ACL and doing tumbling and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting thing. Obstacles she's done, things that they've done to overcome, the self-talk, and all these different things. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Alicia. Alicia, welcome to the Social Chameleon Show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's fun. I've known you for many years. We've been friends. And I want to you've had the Circus Center for a couple of years now, and I kind of want to hear about that journey and some of the other things you're going on. So I'm excited to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I haven't really had a chance to really talk about this journey I've been on, so I'm also excited. Never really had to think deep about running a business.
And that's the things I want to talk about. So that's good to hear. So I know you've been at this for a while, and I know you've done a lot of other athletic things. And I've known, I think probably 7 or 8 years I've known you, and I know you because of the Circus Center and Acro and things like that. What, real quick, is Acro for the listeners? A little TLDR on that, and then how did you get into Acro and the circus type of arts?
Okay. So acro for me, I grew up doing gymnastics until about the age of 12. And then, I kind of hit that middle school, high school where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And it's kind of funny because I tried out for the cheer team starting in high school as kind of a joke because I really didn't think cheerleading was that cool. And then I was like, oh, I'm actually kind of good at this. So I kept going with cheerleading, cheered through college, and did that for 5 years. And leaving a college cheerleading program is kind of hard to do. It's really fun. You build a lot of camaraderie. It's a great team experience. So when I left college, I was trying to find something similar to keep my athletics going.
Mhm.
And I was rock climbing, and at my rock climbing gym, I saw some people doing some beginner acro yoga classes, and I was like, what is this? It's kind of
Mhm.
like cheerleading. So I took a class, and kind of after that, the rest is history. I just kept going because it was so much like partner stunting. And there's little communities of acro everywhere you go. So it was easy to find it in any state I was in.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it seems like you kind of started at the beginning of this in a way. Acro, and I know when I met you and when I kind of first started, it was sort of new, but really now it's really gained a lot of traction. It's quite popular. Um, I feel like you kind of were in the right place at the right time in a way to get into that. And I know what you're saying. It does have a lot of similarities. I know you talked about in class and stuff and coaching and stuff, where it does have a lot of similarities to cheer. So I can see how that was an easy transition for you to go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of like a thing you didn't hear about. And now I feel like it is a little bit more mainstream. You can kind of see circus in general expanding to colleges and school programs, and like acro is now like, oh, it's a readily known thing. I think social media really helps with that and
Mhm,
making like these hidden little gems more popular and attain like to anyone.
mhm. And that's the thing too. Funny, I got into acro. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
So I must be 7, 8, 9 years ago or whatever. He had found it somewhere. I don't remember where. Like he could not stop talking about it, like on his podcast and stuff. And I was like, "What is this guy talking about? I've never heard of this." And he was on Jimmy Fallon, and he was doing it. It was kind of that was the early, kind of definitely the early days. So that's why I found Acrobody. I was like, I googled it, and it was like hard to find anything, and it was like weird. And that was like the only place that I could find that did it. So yeah, like you're saying, that yeah, definitely social media, especially a lot of these things are pretty and stuff like that. But it was so hard to find. Now it's like ubiquitous. It's so many places, and then with that, I've seen the community grow and grow out, which is good for your business, is what we can kind of see with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you go to college on a cheer scholarship?
I did not. So when I was entering into like collegiate cheerleading, it was actually a pretty big thing that cheerleading scholarships weren't plentiful simply because, a lot of people still weren't recognizing cheerleading as a sport.
Mm,
So then major schools weren't offering. So it's a lot more uh like common for people to get scholarships, but during my time going to college it was just really not a thing. You had to be like best of the best and going to like these small rural schools in Kentucky to get any kind of scholarship for cheer.
interesting, because it seems like from my outside perspective, it seems quite popular. There's Netflix shows and there's other shows and stuff like that that showcase these things, and it seems like there's big competitions and big things that seem very popular. But that's interesting that it's not that popular as it may seem from the outside.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like different realms of cheer. So there's like NCAA, UCLA, and then All Star Cheer. And
Mhm,
what you mostly see on those shows is like All Star Cheer, which is kind of like its own entity. It's usually not associated with any kind of education university. It's kind of like your club gymnastics, but
mhm,
cheerleading.
interesting. I'd like to transition to something that happened to you a few years back. You tore your ACL in an accident. What was that like, being a lifelong kind of athlete, from what I understand from you, to going to basically sedentary, like literally overnight or in an instant? What was that like? Is there self talk? Were you in a dark place? Can we talk through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I having a major injury like that, especially since through all of my athletics, I never had like a big in out. So when it first happened, it was kind of like a blur because I just really didn't grasp the extent. And you kind of just like went through the checklist. I was like, okay, something's wrong with my knee. And then, I had a friend that was a PT that was like, you need an MRI. I'm pretty sure you've torn your ACL. And I was like, oh, that seems serious. Got the MRI and they're like, oh, it's like you don't even have an ACL anymore. It's just not there. Yeah. So then it was like, you're gonna need surgery. And I was like, oh, that's wild. Never had surgery before. So
Mhm.
it was all just a new experience. And I felt honestly looking back, like I was just a little bit naive about the whole experience of what I was like, I have the surgery, I do the rehab, and then I like go back and everything's normal. Um and it's really not like injuries like an ACL repair is now what I realize is going to be like a lifelong battle. It's, been almost 3 years or a little over 3 years. And, I still do my prehab. I still have knee pain. Like they're like arthritis is definitely down the road. And then there's going to be, when I'm older, obviously you're going to look at knee replacements and like what other damage has been done. Um, and it was really interesting to go to the surgeon and being 30 getting an ACL repair, and he's like, well, do you even want this surgery? And I was like, well, can I keep
What?
doing yeah, like, what do you mean, can I keep doing acrobatics without it? And he's like, well, no, like, but you'll be able to walk, you'll be able to do day-to-day activities.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, of course I want the surgery. And he was like,
Yeah.
okay, but like, are you going to keep doing athletics, because it's not an easy recovery? And I was just like so blown away that that was an option to just like have no ACL and just keep going about my life, but just never be able to like jump, or
Hmm.
like my knee was going to be so unstable. Um, so after the surgery and all of that went through, like I think that day one coming home, and I was just in so much pain. The surgery
Mhm.
was excruciating, and having to wear a brace for 6 weeks with my leg
Mhm.
complete, like it all kind of started to hit me that it was a it was a big deal and it was going to be hard.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I feel like you're just looking one day at a time, trying to get through the injury. So I can see now that I was struggling. My identity was an athlete, and I no
Right.
longer had that. So I was kind of like, who am I? Like, what if I
Mhm.
can never do athletics again? Like,
Mhm.
what's my identity now?
How did you work through that? I mean, because like you're saying, suddenly I'm not an athlete anymore. Suddenly I might not ever do this, especially what the surgeons are saying, which feels counterintuitive because I mean, from the outside, we see NFL players, college players, high school college players, all kind of athletes tear their ACL, 9 months, they're back on the field. So it feels counterintuitive from what the surgeon was saying versus what we see from the outside. How did you deal with like losing your identity in a way, at least for a little while?
Um, Honestly, like I know a lot of non-athletes who get like maybe they're just highly athletic people but not driven by a sport.
Mhm.
They, a lot of them are like, I didn't do any of the rehab. And so like for me having those scheduled appointments, like it did start to like grow into like a workout for me. So
Mhm.
I had great PT. I would go in, he understood what I wanted, and like gave me workouts based on that. So like that little bit of PT I had 3 times a week was literally kicked my butt as well. I was so sore every time.
Mhm.
So it like kept a little bit of that workout out aspect into it, and like really gave me hope that I had a good PT to get me back. Um I don't know, and I just like I've always been really stubborn and determined.
Yeah,
So
yes,
even
you are.
though yeah, I know. Even though, my surgeon was like, you might not ever get a hyperextension in your knee again, which is so important for what I do.
Mhm.
I was just like, oh, let's see. Like, I'll just prove
Yeah.
you wrong. I just work
Yeah.
really hard, and I have gained a lot more mobility than I thought I would. So it's just kind of like that stubbornness pays off in the aspect that I wasn't going to give up. And I also really hated the idea of quitting acrobatics because of an injury. Like when I do decide to not do it anymore, I want it to be a decision I make, not something I'm forced to do.
Right. Do you think that came from your earlier life, your childhood and teens and high school, the athletic ness that you have? That does that drive come from that, or were you like that maybe always?
Um, that's a good question. I feel like so both my parents were entrepreneurs. My They owned a car lot. My That was my dad's dream. He opened it up, met my mom, and then my mom helped run the business. So my household was just always like, they got up early, they went to work, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, nobody, why don't you sleep in? Nobody's telling you that you have to go. And they
Yeah.
were just very disciplined, um, in running a business. So I did have that aspect actually through high school. I was just like not into school. I like really wasn't motivated, and it didn't really change until I got to college, and I kind of found something uh in college courses. Like, it was event planning when I decided to switch to that route, and I started those classes. Like, I started to get really motivated, and I just had some inspiring college professors that like really instilled in me like, you know, don't quit, that like all these really good qualities to be successful as an adult, not
Mhm.
just as a business professional of any kind.
So, with an entrepreneurial family, why go to college? That seems, was that the status quo you felt like, or something else?
Yeah, my parents didn't really like even push college. I was probably the most like free spirited kid. They were like, whatever you want, but like this would be good. They did support me, but I know like not a lot of my family did go to college, and especially my dad, like he worked I think he worked in the mines at a very young age, dropped out of school. So
Mm,
it felt important to him
mm.
for me to get an education. And so when he passed away when I was 18, I was like, I have to go to college. He's had saved money for me to go to college. So that I think my dad was a little bit of the motivation to just go and get an education and then decide what I wanted to do.
Sorry to hear about your dad. That's sad at such a young age. It's nice. I'm sure he would appreciate you kind of living his dream in a way that was awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting because my family also, I grew up entrepreneurs. My family owned businesses. Everybody in the family worked in the business. But my parents were similar like that, where my dad, he was college educated. My mom was not. I don't know if any, I think his siblings and stuff were, I was college educated as well, but I don't think my grandparents were. But it was very, even though I had no interest in school, I wonder if this is like an entrepreneur kind of brain kind of thing. It seems to be like a similar story where those types of people, us type of people like that, we don't like school for some reason. I mean, it's a structure, maybe it's the authority figure or something like that. But it seems like there's something there to that. But my dad did harp on school as well, even though he was an entrepreneur. He still to this day. That's interesting. I wonder if there's something there with the way our brains are wired or the way we're raised or something.
Yeah, I can see it. I feel like a lot of, and I guess this is still a quality I have, is looking back. I feel like it's a little bit like being told exactly how to do something was like it lacks any like creative outlet. So the classes
Mm,
I did really enjoy were typically more like creative outlets, like like problem solving classes, my art classes, things that weren't like here's a math equation and there's one way to do it and this is exactly how you're going to do it. So like I know I struggled with things like that because it was just like I'm going to tell you how to do it and then you need to learn how to do it exactly how I'm saying. And I was just like, oh, it's so boring. Like, why do I need to know this?
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I know. I with my children, I've never told them to go to college. I could care less if they do or don't. I'd like to leave it up to them. Especially nowadays, I feel like it's so easy to get an education, whatever that means to you. As you see behind me, there's thousands of books. These are just things I like.
Yeah.
It's not even all I've read. I mean, there's YouTube, there's Udemy, there's so many things. There's just getting out and getting that practical experience. I get in trouble from a lot of teachers and other parents. Are like, oh, you've got to tell them to go to college. First of all, my son's 13. That's the last thing he should be thinking about right now. He should be thinking about being a child. But
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
harped on a lot. And I've heard recently, there's some companies and tech companies stuff. They're like foregoing college requirements. Like, listen, if you can demonstrate us competency, and a lot of times these guys are actually more competent because, like you're saying, right? They didn't have a formula. Like, I have to stick to this formula. Show your work. Like they've had to figure out how to solve problems, how to do things. Maybe they do it quicker, faster, better, or whatever. Those different things. So I think that's something that's. I feel like it's going to go to the wayside unless you really have a specialty career you need to get a degree for.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and it's funny because when I left college, I used to blog a lot,
Mhm.
and in one of my first jobs, like, I wrote this blog post that a lot of people liked, and it was, like, all the things college didn't actually teach me, and it was just, like, how to be an adult. Like, I was like, "How do you do taxes?"
Yeah.
Like, I don't how do I that's really important to know, or, like, how do I budget so that I can survive on this low-paying job, and lucky for me, I actually feel like my education has taught me a lot, but it was very real world experience. Like they're like, you're going to school for event management and commercial recreation. So you're gonna plan an event from
Mhm.
start to finish for the school. And like, I mean, nothing I feel like teaches you better than the hands-on experience. So I feel like my college courses were really good and I still use everything they taught me. But I know some people are like, I don't even use my degree. And I'm like, oh, that's a bummer because it's a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I have to have that discussion with my son too. Like in high school, I took up to it was trigonometry, like pre-calculus, and then I was like, when am I ever going to use this? And then I went to college for a little bit, and I was like, this is stupid. And then I finally one day I got a job. I think I was in my late 20s, and I was like, oh my god, I need to use math again. And I had to like relearn like how do you get the area of this and how does this stuff? And I had to relearn those things. My son, he's kind of like, how do you not know how to do this stuff, Dad? I'm like, hey, I was like, first of all, I've never used this stuff in a long time, so I can understand the frustration with that, especially as you start to get older. You're like, I really didn't need this, or in most cases, or a lot of cases, I'd say.
Oh yeah. And even like when I coached gymnastics, the kids would be like, can you help me with my math homework? And I was like, oh my gosh, you're 7 year olds like a 7 year old math homework. But I was like,
Yeah,
this is so complex. Like I'm so sorry I can't help you.
that's funny. So with your life now, you own and operate and train at the Arizona Circus Center.
Yeah.
So how how do you manage? I hate the word balance, but maybe for clarity, we can go with that. You got to work on your business, you got to work in your business, and you're also a client in your business. How do you manage those roles? How do you switch hats? How do you switch between them? What have you found out? What have you learned, tried?
Ugh, so much. I feel like the first 2 years, we're now in, like, going into year 3. The first 2 years, I would say there was no balance. Like, it was scary, it was new, so it was, like, 100% just, like, work on the business from when we wake up to when we go to bed. We did everything ourselves. I was injured, so, like,
Mhm.
training kind of took a back burner. I did my PT. In some way, like the delay of my PT was because of owning the business, and we had a show, and it was like conflicting. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to put it off 2 weeks. And then I told my surgeon that I just started PT a month later, and he was like, that was the biggest mistake of your life. Why
Oh
would you
no.
start PT late? And I was like, I didn't know. But yeah, so it was like we just dove all in. And there was no balance. And so by the end of last year, like I was burnt. I was honestly at a point where I like sat down with friend, my business partner, and I was like, I'm not sure I want to own a business. Like I thought I wanted this my entire life, but there was so much I just didn't anticipate having to do or having to learn or having to manage. And I just felt like my quality of life was not where I wanted it to be. And I was very unhappy. And so it kind of forced me, like I took the holidays off. I took a solid like month off and just stepped away. And then I had to like refocus and be like, what do I like to do for my business? Like, how can I better manage my boundaries? And then I slowly started adding things back in from January till now. And I feel like I'm in a much better place. Like, I definitely have found some tips of just like planning is so important and then trying to set those boundaries and stick to that schedule. We hired help, which we needed, but it's always hard to decide like budgetary, like,
Yeah.
is the help going to pay for itself or is that it's always scary to ask people help. But that's been really beneficial. And I feel like the biggest part of running a business has been learning how to like balance the work. I think a lot of people just don't even understand what goes into not only running your own business, but running a business with that's a service industry. And you have a lot of different people coming through the door, whether they're your coaches, your clientele, parents. It's a lot to manage socially, and that can be exhausting.
What what did you try? What worked? What didn't work? Maybe what was the best advice that worked for you or didn't work for you to figure all that out and finally get to something that's kind of where you're at now. I'm kind of glad I waited to ask you to get on here. Sounds like you're in a better place. So
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Um, oh man. So like if I feel like the best advice I was ever given, I read a lot of Brene Brown books, which
she's great.
I love Brene Brown. She's very inspiring to me. And like her thought process of being like, if you're not in their arena, like if they're not in there with you, you don't need to listen to them. And
Mhm.
that's the hard part of being a business owner is everyone thinks they know what's best. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you're like, oh, am I messing up? Are they right? Like, and so when I switched my mindset to like, unless you've ran a business or you've produced a show, like I can hear your input and I can process it, but I can choose to leave it. Um, was really helpful just because you just don't have the experience. You don't have the full story to give me advice on how to do things. And another really good friend of ours, he was also they run a business and they travel through Ren Fair, and he was like saying how they get really busy, and instead of saying no to things, he just puts the price at a
Mm.
point that it's worth doing. And that was actually a really like eye-opening moment where he was like, yeah, I just ask for how much it's worth to you to do, and if
Mm.
they pass on it because it's too much money or the stipulations are too big, then you know it's not for you. And then if not, then they do it and you're like, wow, okay, like this is not worth my time. And I was like, that was really game changing and advice for us as well.
That's really great. You learned that. That is a very valuable lesson, and it's hard from my perspective. What I do, I help entrepreneurs and stuff, and I help small business. They are so reluctant to change price. They are so reluctant to raise price, and like you're saying, a lot of problems go away. Not to also mention a
Mhm.
lot of stress is relieved as well. Suddenly, your profit margins are bigger, and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's so hard to convince people to change price, up their prices, and stuff like that. I'm glad you learned that lesson.
Yeah, I think I mean, like, our prices in the general scheme of the market, like, were really low for a long time, but we were really nervous to raise the prices. So when we, realized that our pricing structure was significantly lower than the general, like, national market, we were like, okay, we need to raise prices. But especially coming from Acrobody, which prices were like crazy affordable. We just didn't want to lose like a whole demographic because going from $12 to $20 was a lot. And then we are going 20 to 25, but we were also like way under market value, which means like we couldn't pay our instructors as well as we wanted to. So we made those adjustments this year and it was, you're like, okay, how's that going to affect our business? But I think it was cool to have clients actually reach out and be like, "Oh, good. I'm glad you're doing this. This is necessary," and like support our decision versus getting that backlash of like, "What are you doing? I can't afford your service anymore."
And from my perspective, looking in, that the place is busier than I've ever seen it. So it doesn't.
Yeah.
It seems fine.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I feel like that's not always the case when people change pricing.
Yeah. Right. Of
So
course.
yeah, I think being a little bit on the back end, like not leading that price change, but kind of following what everyone else is doing is just a little bit safer in the mindset. Cause I mean, the nice thing is our most reoccurring customers are traveling. They are going to other places. They are learning from other coaches. And so they kind of understand that, oh, wow, this is actually pretty much what I would pay anywhere else.
Yeah, and like you're saying, I think with the economic situations we're in 2024, everything's raising, and I think people, like you're saying, are comfortable. Like, okay, these are coming. It's eventually going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you could have a hard time asking for help.
Oh, absolutely. How did you know that?
It's just been a little while. So, how have you started to overcome that? Like you're saying, you had to learn to ask for help. You had to hire people. How are you working on that? How did you start to kind of dip your toe in the water?
Oof. Honestly, I'm still working on that. I actually recently was just talking to somebody and was just saying like sometimes what I don't think people realize when you're a small business owner is like how much you've invested in this project or this little baby of yours. So that lack of trust of wanting to ask for help and worried that it might not like get done to the quality that you're wanting to present is it's just like your whole life. You're like, like in 2 months I could wake up and my business could fail. That's just
Mhm.
the reality of being a business owner. Like we could like not follow certain safety and risk management and then lose our insurance. And there's very few insurance companies that support what we do. So like there's a lot of carefulness around owning a business. And so I'm still working on it because in order to grow, you have to like find your tribe that supports your core values, your mission. And I feel like the best way that I've been able to let go of that control is to um like be able to relax myself is the best way I can say it. Like
Okay.
let things go a little bit and like instead of being trying to have control of everything, just like if things aren't going to plan, just kind of be like, okay, Like, I'm going to hear this out and then I'm going to move forward with it instead of like hounding the situation and be like, oh, this didn't go right. This isn't how I wanted things to go. So, like, being able to work on myself and like let things be the way they are, not feel like I need that control has kind of just like let me put some projects into other people's hands and be a little bit more open to like maybe that's not how I would have done it, but was that the same outcome? Did we achieve the same goal?
Right. Right. Are you familiar with Jocko Willink?
I am not.
He wrote a book, Extreme Ownership, and some other things. He's a former retired Navy SEAL commander. He talks about what you're saying here is giving people ownership, being able to detach and saying, 80%, is that good enough? Like, like you're saying,
Yeah.
are we getting to the same outcome? And that's how he was able to learn something he learned, commanding the Navy SEALs and all these things. He learned those concepts and he's kind of expressing them now through leadership and stuff like that. So it's interesting that you've learned that as well.
Yeah. Kind of honestly through Brent, who since we started this business was like, it's gonna be okay, Alicia. Like
Yeah.
it didn't go how you wanted, but it's still okay. So on it, like trying to be a little bit more like Brent has been really helpful, which is he's just so like, oh, I don't care if they hate me, they hate me. If that's their choice, but we just got to move forward. I'm like, how do you just relax so much and just like let things be?
That's great that he's that yin to your yang, because that could be,
Yeah.
if he was similar to you, that could be, as co-owners and stuff like that, that could be very detrimental to the business.
Yeah, I really like I think our success is really just our partnership is very opposite. So, he's the people person. He's the like, I'm gonna go talk to people. And that's what he enjoys. And I'm like the behind the scenes, the details, like I think about every little thing that could happen. So like we really do work well together. And if there were two people who were just like, oh my gosh, this didn't go according to plan, like the business would have failed so long ago.
Yeah. Where did you get that from? Do you think, or is that something you're just maybe born with or something?
Um, Honestly, I think it was just from my work experience. Like being an event planner is thinking of all the details and then like implementing a plan. And then the goal is to put that plan into action
Mhm.
exactly as you had. Like maybe there's small things, but a lot of times you like plan the event, you build the event, and it goes exactly how you plan it. So I think it's just from my schooling, from my work experience prior to circus. Um, and like you're like, when fires arise, we take care of it, but you usually have a plan for it already. Like, I've
Right.
planned for the worst. I already got this. Don't worry.
Yeah, the contingency planning. See, I'm not good at that. I need people around me that contingency plan, because I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out. I don't know when it comes there. It'll get done.
Yeah. And that's how Brent is. And that's where I am. And I'm like, I've already thought of this. This is my solution.
Yeah, I one of my business colleagues, he's always harping on me. You need more plans. You need more contingency. I was like, bro, that's you, buddy. You figure that out. I don't have nothing to do with that.
Yeah. And even when you plan for everything, there's always something you're
Of
like,
course.
okay, like now I got to learn something because this is outside of what I thought I would need to deal with.
Yeah, but once you get that experience, you're gonna start to recognize that, and you know how to like learn to ask for help. You can start saying, okay, listen, these situations come up, and then you get experience from all that. So yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you started doing acro, and then you and Brent started doing your guys' thing. You got Edge Acrobatics. You guys were doing your shows and stuff. You were teaching at Acro Body. That went away. Then you guys moved over to Vertical Fix. You managed that, whatever the capacity was there. And then,
Hmm.
COVID and stuff came around. That place, from my understanding, wasn't doing quite well, and it came up for sale. Um, why did you guys buy that? Anybody could have just looked at that and said, you guys are stupid, you should just wait for a new owner, or you guys should go somewhere else, or maybe go from scratch. Why buy the place?
Um, so long, I think about right even before Acrobody opened,
Mhm.
actually. We were doing a lot of training at the San Diego Circus Center under Jean-Luc, and we would like spend 3 months, take our whole summer, spend our whole savings to go somewhere else to train. And we were like, man, we just like really need a facility in Phoenix. It's lacking in the market. I think other people would like it. And then, you know, Acrobody opened, and it was a great acro space, but it lacked the area, it lacked a full circus training. But it was a step in the right direction. And so we like continued to train, and we actually talked to Jean-Luc a lot about opening our own space, or like, you know, we're touring between like, do we pursue professional performing, try to get contracts, or do we coach? Like we love doing both. And we were trying to decide what our future was going to look like. And the thing I love about the San Diego Circus Center is there's this just environment that's so awesome to be in. It's very supportive, it's very welcoming. Like we would be gone for 8 months, come back, and the same people would just be like, "Oh my God, you're back in town. How long?" Like they greeted you. And I just love that community aspect he's built. And it's a great facility. And we were just like, I want something like that closer to us. And so when Acrobody closed, we were like, okay, like that's a good opportunity to take what was built, bring it to Vertical Fix. And they had aerial already, so we would could add the ground stuff. And I was like, okay, that's even another step in the right direction. And just kind of get experience under a bigger studio operating. And Thomas was nice enough to bring us on to help him manage. I mean, he was running that whole business and then his landscaping business, which
Mhm.
today still blows my mind how he did it. And we learned a lot just about like his operations, what he was doing. And, you know, I'm sure when this first came up, he probably wasn't like super thrilled, but there was a point where I was like, you know, Thomas, like, have you ever thought about like not owning the business anymore? Like, it seems to cause you a lot of stress. It's something me and Brent want to do. And I told him, like, one day I want to build my own dream, and I want to stop building this dream for other people.
Mhm.
And he was like, no, I don't want to sell to you. Absolutely not. And we're like, okay, we'll keep going. And then COVID happened and the business was struggling, and we're working together. And, you know, once again, we're like, you know, we could buy and take on this risk. And again, it was like, no. So we're like, okay, we'll just keep waiting. And then it was actually like we got through COVID and we're still like, okay, the business is gonna be okay. And I think it was just so much work at that point that we sat down for a meeting with Thomas, and he was like, I've been thinking about what you said about like you're gonna build your own gym one day, and like you don't want to keep building this dream for me. So like is buying the studio still on the table? Um and Brent's always like, yeah, absolutely. And I'm, you know, the realistic one, like, oh my God, okay, this could be a thing. Like, I don't even how do we afford this? Like, I have no
Right.
idea what I'm doing. How do you acquire a business? And luckily Brent's dad was super supportive. He also an entrepreneur his whole life and was willing to front us money to
Oh,
like
nice.
achieve this dream. So his dad helped us look through all the papers, what we are getting, the contracts and acquisitions. And, you know, even talking with our mentor, Jean-Luc, he was like, I don't think you want to buy another business. Like, start from scratch. You're going to have a lot to deal with. And we're like, oh, it's just so scary to start from scratch
Mhm.
when this is already built. We're already in it. We've already managed it. Um, so it just, you know, it's kind of like the stars aligned and it felt right. Uh, I went from like, I don't understand how we're ever going to achieve this dream to like, oh my God, the opportunity is right here in front of me. So with everything aligning up, we're like, okay, let's do it. It's scary, but let's see what we can do. And we felt like we had helped Thomas turn around so much already that we could just like keep going off that momentum.
Um, was there a point where you guys started talking yourself out of it? Like, this is a lot of money, you know, maybe not. Typically acquiring a business is the better thing because the business is established. It's gone through that initial period of failure. So that's good. Did that happen at all?
I can't speak for Brent because I feel like he's always just trying to be the calm one. But I felt like every single day up until that point where I said I was burnt out, I was just like, what are we doing? Is this the right thing? Because it wasn't a brand that we wanted. Like it was labeled as aerial art, so it
Mhm.
wasn't a circus center. Like I didn't love the logo or branding. just because it didn't speak to me and what my vision was. So, and then you also like, you're hiring people who are used to things a certain way.
Right.
And, there's already a culture built. So when you're trying to shift things to how you envision it to be, there's a lot of resistance or fear with the change. And so there was a lot of times where I was like, I think should have just started from scratch.
Mhm.
And, you know, change takes time. So after that 2-year mark, I was like, okay, like I think things are shifting in a way that we like. And I'm glad we stuck with it. But, for me, every single day, I was like, I don't know if we're doing the right thing. I had so many doubts that we would be able to achieve what we've achieved today.
Well, how did you do that? Was there some self-talk? Was there, I don't know, something that you did? How did you mentally get through that?
You honestly, like I said, I read those Brene Brown books, and I feel like when I was definitely at the quitting points, those gave me some like personal things to work on. And honestly, um, I like Thomas had a lot of the same struggles that I felt like because our personalities were very similar and we connected on that. So having the owner still around or
Mm.
the past owners still around to like confide in, to like talk through it was comforting on both parts because we could, he'd be like, I went through this and what was your advice to me? Like this, and this. And I'm like, oh, thanks for spilling our own advice back at us. You're right. And
Yeah.
then, for him to be like, okay, like I feel very validated in all the things I complained about because
Mm.
you guys are complaining about it too. And so I feel like him still being there to kind of like be a shoulder to lean on was really helpful. And if he would have just been like, here's the business and dipped out, I think it would have been a lot harder to get through.
That's good to know. So I guess for people out there, it can be an advantage to have those golden handcuffs a little bit for the new owner. Um,
Yeah.
Something I recognize and I really just love about my experience in the acro circus community. 99.9% of the time, that is some of the best people I have ever met. How have you been able to continue cultivating that and fostering that, as well as switching the culture? Sounds like from your staff to what, however you wanted to mold that.
Yeah. I feel like it's a little bit of s- leading the best we can by example. Kind of just like keeps bringing people in. I it really helps that like circus is like either a pastime or like a safe haven, or it's something that people are going to do to find joy, to decompress from work, to find an outlet. So, it's just making sure it continues to be that kind of safe space and like realizing that that one class that person goes to might be the highlight of their week. And
Hmm.
so, we're just trying to create that inclusive environment where anyone can come in, they can be any level, but practice in a safe way. So having a lot of different level offerings. And then for us, it's like really trying to keep our staff like trained, motivated, happy. Like if our coaches are doom and gloom, our students are going to be doom and gloom.
Hmm.
So we're just trying to like, the more peppy and open the environment is, the more people feel like they can come in and just be themselves.
What are some tips, tricks, strategies, tactics that you use to keep the coaches inspired, motivated, keep them happy, even firing people? If that's something you need to do.
Yeah. When so it's really funny you asked that because the one thing I didn't realize when I became a business owner where I managed other people is how much being a business owner is just talking to your staff, like keeping them happy. Almost like I hate saying like being a therapist, but like just checking in, being like, like someone came in and like, oh my gosh, my dog died. And you're like, it's important that I take whatever time out of my busy schedule to have that conversation just to make them feel heard, to connect with them. And that's just not something I was prepared for at all. And I didn't realize how much that was going to be important to succeeding and being a business owner is that connection with your staff. And I was just like, this is exhausting. Like, I don't want to talk to any more people today, but then you have to. And
Yeah.
so it's just, you know, Brent's great at it again. So I have a partner that really helps split that work up. But
Mm.
for me, it was just kind of realizing that that was a part of the job. It wasn't just like administrative work and program and curriculum building. It was not going to be behind a computer. I had to touch base and talk to people and feel accessible. So if my staff does have complaints, recommendations, they felt like they could talk to me. And at first you're so stressed out that I don't think I was very available, or they're like, "Oh my god, I don't want to ask Alicia. She's scary today." I was. So learning to adjust to that expectation and just giving myself grace, because it was a new skill and I'm still working on it. And I still have my days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't talk to anyone today and I'm a little grumpy. And then I just try to recognize that's human. And then, tomorrow I'm going to try a little bit better.
What about hiring and firing? What have you learned in that realm?
Luckily, like, we haven't really had any firing. I feel like a lot of times, uh, if you really push your values, your mission statement, your expectations, you have clear communication, I think people kind of like uh choose to stay or choose to go. And I did have a college professor that was like, if you don't like where you're sitting, then get off the bus because somebody else wants that seat. Somebody
Mhm.
else is dying to be there. And that's always really stuck with me. And so I feel like hiring is always tough. There's not like a bazillion circus instructors ready for this niche job. It's usually like a secondary job. So you're really managing other schedules. It's hard. It's very hard to be a full time coach. Not many people can do that just from the social aspect alone. You're always on, you're always 100% energy. So we're still kind of working through like an onboarding process, a training, filling out how to hire the right people. And then I would say firing, it's like there's only been one instance where I was like, okay, this person needs to go.
Mhm.
Like they don't support us, they don't support our vision, they don't like how we run the business. And they kind of ended up leaving themselves. But I think
Okay.
we should have made a statement
Mhm.
by letting that person go. So I think it would have set an example of, hey, like if you're not on board, like we will ask you to leave. Like there is a little bit of seriousness where I felt like maybe actually firing someone would have been more beneficial than just being like, oh yay, they're leaving on their own. Perfect. I don't have to deal with that. So we avoided those tough conversations, but I think it would have been beneficial for the staff to see that in the end.
Did you guys purposely avoid those conversations, or did it just so happens maybe they felt like I'm probably going to get fired, I got to go?
Um, I feel like it just, again, like it all kind of worked out. I think like they knew we were unhappy and they were unhappy. And so it just kind of like broke apart. But um yeah, like I would say like we probably avoided the tough conversations, and that's the hard part, is like giving feedback to people is like so hard. We're always like, you go do it. No, you go do it. Like, oh, I have to go tell this person this happened, just because we do, coaches tend to like have a lot of like perfectionist qualities, especially if you're training in athletics. So hearing like, hey, I have some feedback for you, it's just always like a tough conversation, even though you're like, it's okay, like we're gonna receive it and then we're gonna work on like a plan to make it better. And it's not just a complaint, it's just a way to continue to improve. But like nobody ever hears it like that. It's always like, oh my god, I
Right.
messed up.
How are you getting better at that? Working on that? Are you something you're practicing?
Yeah. For me, I feel like we ask everyone like how they want to receive their feedback so that they know that feedback does happen. And then I feel like a good time, unless it's like a super urgent matter, which we don't have a lot of those, we try to schedule like check-ins. So we'll sit
Mhm.
down, we'll have an hour of conversation of just like, okay, like how are things going? Where do you feel like your resources are lacking? Here's how I think you could improve. Here's how you think we can improve. And we just try to have open conversations and check-ins with our staff.
I like that. How do you avoid like pandering?
Uh, what do you mean exactly by that?
Like you're saying that, oh, how do you want me to coach you? How do you avoid that from being like, well, oh, they don't want me to be mean. They only want me to say nice words. They don't want to hear when
Oh
I
yeah.
messed up.
Okay.
I only have to talk nice. I have to be so careful around this person. Especially like, uh, I think it's more common with children nowadays, especially, they're always, I'm a star at everything. I've got 700 trophies because I showed up to every class this week. So how do you
Mhm.
avoid that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like it's just kind of a part of the process. And I feel like, again, as we are able to hire our own staff and bring them in, the expectation and the clear communication from the beginning is important to that.
Mhm.
Again, like we still have, we've had staff that have worked under this business for almost a decade, and only 3 of those years have been under us. So, like, we're still combating some of like, well, when this person owned the business or when this person owned the business, and just that change in expectation. So I think like as our business grows and we kind of set a new tone and we just like come in from the start with those clear, like I love Brene Brown's like clear is kind, even if that tough conversations, like don't use few words and just make sure the point's across. Don't like dilute it with things. Those things help. And it's just a process to keep navigating. Like it's always going to be there. You can't always fully resolve everything. So you just got to keep navigating it.
Yeah, that's a tough conversation. That's definitely a skill. Uh, so every business has brick walls, obstacles, shit. What's the shit you didn't expect or see coming when you guys bought, uh, Vertical Fix, which is now Arizona Circus Center?
So much. So much. Um, I feel like at first it was the personal conflicts of students, like how many times like a student might bring you into your office and be like, I need to talk to you about this other student. And
Mhm.
then and especially like, we don't we have like some young adults, but we mostly have older adults, that 27-30 range. And so I just didn't like being able to handle someone coming in and having some like big accusations about other people coming in the studio. And then, you're like, okay, so like what class or where in the studio this happened? They're like, oh, this was at a party. And I'm like, wait, why are you telling me this? Like, I don't own the party. Like,
Yeah.
so that was like a huge navigation thing. And I think that came with like, we just like kind of started cleaning up the culture a little bit that, like we've set tones that were like, I joke and I'm like, if I had to really dive deep into everyone's drama, I would go insane. So, like, unless there's some big like police report or huge incident that's definitely a legal issue, like everyone is welcome into our space unless something serious happens that we will look into it. But personal problems out the door. Um, the second big obstacle I feel like is space. Like we did grow really fast right after COVID, and we don't have the ceiling height that we want. We don't have the like not square footage, but like the ability to have multiple pulley points so we can change out apparatuses. So
Mhm.
I want a trampoline, but our ceilings are definitely too low for that. So finding an air conditioned space in the Phoenix area that meets like a certain ceiling height, clear height requirement, but isn't like 30,000 plus square feet I mean, we spent now 3 years looking,
Yeah.
and we are still struggling to find that spot.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that aspect. I'm very curious on how you guys are progressing with that. What that, I mean, that's a big thing. You, like you're saying, you're still dealing with to this day. We're here in June of 24. What have you learned from that? How have you been able to navigate that and stay patient, stay calm, not be frustrated? Not saying you are or not, but you know.
Yeah. Luckily, like one of our coaches did put us into the hands of a really great realtor who's been very patient and stuck with us. We have reached out to just people who like do one search, they offer us the space that's like, no, that's not gonna work at all. And they're like, ah, okay. And then they like kind of ghost us and we're like,
Mhm.
okay. He's worked with us through like 2 years now. He's really given us some great spaces. We've even applied to spaces, but it's just the market is so easy to pick and choose who your tenants are that if you're going to have this really niche, weird people coming in, rigging things to your ceiling versus someone who's like, I just want to store some boxes, you're going to pick the easier tenant.
Mhm.
So our usage tends to like turn people away a little bit. Plus, we take up like 30 plus parking spots every evening. So, parking is always a big factor. Um, so, I feel like we're at a stage where we're having to consider scarier routes, which is like building.
Mhm.
And, you know, our realtor's like, it's a good market. You could build your dream space. You don't need that square footage yet, and then sublease, or you could or lease out, and then you pretty much have two businesses. When
Mhm.
you want to grow into it, you don't sublease it out anymore. And then, like finding a bigger space and just subleasing out whatever additional space again. Um, so I don't know, we're like considering it. We're just kind of like, that's also just a whole nother route. We are like, cool, I'll have to learn all about
Yeah.
building, construction, outfitting, like so much more to learn about than that. So we've kind of dialed back like the perfect space and being like, okay, this is a little bit bigger than we wanted. Can we make that work? Or this is a little bit out of our range of clientele. Will they still come? So just giving up a little bit on the stipulations. Some people do say, like, I think if you build it, they'll come. And I'm like, hopefully.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, that and I can't imagine what the stress would be like. I mean, you probably would be in it over $1 million, and then
Yeah.
like you're saying, hoping they do come. I'm not saying they will or won't, but that's a scary proposition, to suddenly, run off $1 million in debt and construction, project management, built to suit, whatever you guys, all that stuff. I mean, yeah, that's a lot to think about and kind of evaluate.
Yeah, especially so early into owning business, because I feel like if this was more like we were at 5 years and we had a really good pulse on what we were doing,
Mhm.
that would be different. But I'm like, I don't know, in 2 years, are we still going to want to be doing this? Like, what if we want to move? Like,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
already feeling pretty tied down. So, yeah, but it is hard because we're at a point where I think if we don't move, we risk like a little bit of decline in our business from people going other places. Like, I mean, there are students who want to do this professionally, and they're like, you don't have been considering moving to just get higher ceilings, to get different like disciplines that we can't offer because of space. And so, you know, like there's a huge market of people who just want higher ceilings for aerial or to have trampoline or, better adult tumbling equipment. And if we don't find it, then they're going to find it somewhere else.
right. Is there competition for these things in the Valley in here in Phoenix area?
Um, you know, for the specific things we're looking at providing, I would say no, there's not really anything in it. There might be like, a few like parkour gyms,
Mm.
ninja gyms that just allow like, yeah, you can come in and you can rig your apparatus. But ceiling height is really the hardest thing. The biggest thing I would say we compete with is that like on a standard aerial rig, you can get more height. So people just buy rigs, train in their backyard.
Oh, right.
Um, and there's some online coaching is such a big thing. So that could be seen as a little bit like taking away from our business. So, but otherwise, no, there's like nothing else in the valley yet. But like, you never know. Somebody could come through and be like, I bought this 30,000 square foot facility and now I am offering aerial because it is growing. It is more popular of a business to do now.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some tech guy or some inheritance or some lottery winner that's like, oh, great, I've got $50 million I just got from exiting or something, and I'm just going to go build my dream facility, and then that you suddenly have competition.
Yeah. And then we're like, why couldn't you just donate that money to us?
That's funny. So, from my perspective as a student, this is how I see you as a coach. I feel like you're very big and you're a stickler in a good way on fundamentals. How do you manage? We'll go with the word balance again. Having us as students learn and get good at the fundamentals, but also balancing towards maybe the end of class. Like, listen, I just want to have fun. I want to throw some stupid tricks. How do you work to balance that and keeping us happy in a way, but also not neglecting the things that are going to make those bigger tricks actually work?
Yeah. It's honestly a tough thing with coaching. And I would say even like, especially in adults, because kids are like they come in and they're taught that they just listen to you. So you like in gymnastics, we can do basics all day long and then you play a game and that's like everyone's happy.
Mhm.
Um adults are just so eager to get to that goal, which is usually not like the next step, but like 10 steps above. They're like, I have
Mhm.
this dream of doing this skill, but I've never tried this before. And you're like,
I saw it on
wow, okay.
Instagram, and I think I can
Yeah,
do it. Yeah.
exactly. And then like there's no patience in getting there. So I feel like the way we try to manage it is just like creating that routine. Our training we loved. And it helps that I came from gymnastics, Brent came from martial arts. So like discipline is something we were taught. So like we would come in, we would do like almost an hour and a half of just like fundamental work, like the same exact routine for 3 months straight, like 4 to 5 days a week. And then like we would get to throw the skills that they were working for like 30 minutes. And even someone training, I was like, oh, how are we ever going to get this skill if we just like only get this amount of time? But the reality of it is just like in gymnastics, you are not trying to throw the hardest things to injure your body over and over and over and over again. Like the goal is to not put wear and tear unnecessarily on your body. So trying to just like build the foundation so you get like 6 quality reps and they're all good and you feel good about it. I feel like it's such a better path because you're going to be able to do it for so much longer. So you kind of got to just like let people figure that out for themselves. Like I feel like people will fight you at first, um and then we'll just kind of like be like, okay, let's just do it, let's just throw that skill you've been wanting to do. And then, they get like 20 reps of just repeat, 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 repeat. And then they're like, okay, I understand I need that drill now. So, like, being a coach isn't necessarily always just telling people, I know what you need. It's kind of like seeing what they need and then guiding them on that journey and accepting that it's their practice. So at the end of the day, I can't like dictate what you choose to do, but I can be a resource and I can guide you the best I can. But every athlete that comes in, that's their choice and they're responsible for their success. I am just a resource.
Yeah, I understand. I think that something with coming from an athletic or martial arts background, I think it helps. I I I remember when I first started doing acro, I was like, I don't know how somebody can stand on my wrists. I what? But if you tried that, I mean, I would go home at night and just be so achingly sore. I was like, and never in my life have I had to work out my wrists. And I played football and basketball. I did sports. I was in the military. Never ever worked on my wrists. I had to go home and soak in a warm Epsom salt bath. But you learn that, like, if I don't build these tiny little muscles and the ligaments take so long and tendons to strengthen and to stretch and stuff, you'll never do these things. And it's so easy to get overuse injuries in this kind of sports.
Absolutely. And it's hard because there is social media that makes it look like everyone in the world is doing these things. But like, I think constantly reminding people that especially hand to hand, like it is an advanced discipline of circus. It does require an immense amount of body awareness and athleticism and strength on both parts, fire and base. And that is why there are a few people that do it in the world, even though social media makes it look like everyone can just go and do hand to hand. I'm like, it's when you look at that percentage, it is so small. And even just like, I think I saw there was like, or maybe I think it was my PT because when I was injured with my knee, they would do the like get back to sport test. And I just felt so cool because they were like, "Oh my god, you're insane." And like all these people would just be like, "You're just so amazing. I don't know why you're in here." And they're just trying to sit in a chair and stand back up and I'm like trying to get a pistol squat back and he was like there's only I was doing pull-ups and he's like, there's only like a small percentage of the population that can actually do more than 3 pull-ups. And I was like, no way. Like everyone I know can do like 10. And they're like, that's an insane amount of pull-ups, especially for females. And so it's like weird when you're bringing this small group of people together in this building, that becomes your norm. But when you like open up your vision, you're like, what we do is actually pretty incredible on every single scale. From the most beginner thing we offer, there's a small percentage of the population doing that.
Yeah, I think 80 or 90% of I don't know if it's just males can't even do one pull up,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. I'm not good at pull ups, but that just blows my mind.
Yeah. I'm mine too.
What is a habit that you've recently added, or maybe even more importantly, removed from your life lately, or maybe your training practice or business or something?
Ooh, I'm big on habits. And just like self-improvement in general. I feel like um I I always have a habit tracker and I think for a long time, like spent so much time on reading self-improvement books, trying to be a good business owner, trying to have better habits that I kind of like lost sight that it's okay to just be happy with
Mm,
where I'm at. So I feel like something I've recently been trying to add is just like spending more time in the present and like
mm.
just especially like as a business owner, sometimes I'm in the studio and I'm like 4 million thoughts through my head and someone's talking to me and I'm like, I'm not grasping any of this. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. So it's very hard to be present. So I'm just trying to you know, uh take a moment and just kind of be like, okay, like what's around me? Like what's the environment? Like what do I hear? What do I see? And just be in that moment to help just make life a little less stressful and to not let the years just fly by because they will. And so for me, it's like letting time slow down a bit and appreciating this moment and then celebrating the successes. So we've like decided to have champagne set aside for a big goal because like
Nice.
we've done some big things and then we're just like what's next and you don't take
Yeah.
time to celebrate it. And so one of them's like when we get our new space we have this really nice champagne, we're gonna stop and celebrate that we made this huge achievement when we get to it.
That's beautiful because, like you're saying, a lot of people are like, that was great. And then 17 seconds later, like, what's the next on my list?
Oh yeah, I'm so guilty of it every time. Like
Yeah, I hear you.
even as a coach, like sometimes you're like, okay, that was good. So here's your next thing. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's gotta feel awful as the student. You're just like, I just did something so cool. And the coach is like, okay, finally, now let's move on.
I love it because I'm like, wait, there's another step to this? Like, okay, I didn't know that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think something important you're saying with like your habit tracker nowadays. I mean, personally, myself, I have a ring that tracks everything I do. My bed tracks every bit of sleep, my breath, everything. It's easy with the Apple Watches and the Garmin's and the Whoop straps, and so you can wind up turning that into a game and an obsession very easily.
Oh yeah, easily.
I've got to stop myself from looking at this stuff. Like, okay, I got only a 92 last night for sleep. Like, okay, like I got to stop from trying to over optimize those things too.
Yeah, and I training is a big one, especially with, technology that now tells you like you've recovered enough to work out today. Like our front desk um Brianna, she said something the other day that was really like, she was like, I'm taking it easy because my back's been bothering me. And, like you should listen to your body before it's screaming at you. And I was like, oh, that's good. And like sometimes I think we just
It's so
need to
hard.
pay more attention to actually how we're feeling versus like what the technology is telling us how we're feeling, and just checking in and just being like, okay, like I'm feeling this way. Like, am I hungry? Am I tired? Am I angry? Am I just cooped up? Do I need to go to a walk? And like being able to recognize those feelings and then know what you can do to help get back on track, or just like sit in it and recognize it for a moment is, I feel like, so helpful to maintain like a healthy life.
Yeah, I'll get some notifications or something, and I'm like, I feel good today. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, your HRV is 13% lower than normal. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't train today. And I'm like, I feel fine. Like, what?
Yeah.
Those get in your head so easy. And I mean, I will break myself before I stop training. I'm like, yeah, that hurts a little bit, but once I get warmed up, it stops. And
Yeah.
recently, I know I had massive tendonitis, and I just went so far to the point where I just couldn't even grab a glass anymore. I was like, okay, I need to stop.
Yeah. And it's hard because we are, I don't know, like a little bit out of touch with our body. And even I feel like with a knee injury, like an ACL surgery, I actually coach quite a few people who want to tumble on an ACL repair. And like the biggest battle for them is the mental, like, oh, my knee feels weird. Did I like mess it up, or is it just a little because there is going to be a constant pain with it. So now you're navigating, like, my knee might not feel 100% all the time, but now I need to know when like that pain is warning pain, or is that just like now it's my normal pain because I had this huge surgery. That's been like a wild experience to manage.
On the other hand, what an interesting, very niche skill you developed. You are now probably one of the only people in the world that know how to tumble within a new ACL.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's because tumbling requires a lot of explosive single leg jumping. So like, we'll work on that a little bit. And like my PT helped me a lot with that. And I'm still not back after so many years. And sometimes you just don't quite equal out the legs. But yeah, it's like always surprising to people to do these drills and they're like, oh my God, my left leg or my surgical leg just doesn't even jump. And I'm like, yeah, but it will. You need to
Mhm.
train it. And that's not something you just train even through some sports or activities. Like that's a very specific thing.
Are you aware of a general time frame when those things start to come back?
Um, so just from my experience, they told me like the 9-month recovery timeline is a generous description of ACL recovery. And I think my surgeon explained it to me in a really great way of saying like, okay, so you have this football player who plays on a professional team who gets an ACL injury, and their whole life is surrounded and dedicated to their health. So they are working out their PT twice a day instead of those 3 times a week, and they're eating healthy. And so their recovery time potentially is at 9 months. They're back on the field playing. And he was like, and that's maybe
Yeah.
most of those football players are actually a year out. And then so then you just got to look at it like, okay, my whole life isn't just dedicated to training anymore. I run a business, I'm sitting more. I don't have time to work out 3 times a day and track my meals. And so like my recovery time is going to be a lot longer than that. And so I feel like a timeline is just whatever you decide it's going to be. So like you want that shorter timeline, then you're doing agility workouts 3 times a day. You're doing it once a week, it's probably going to be like a 2 to 3 year recovery just to get that back.
Wow. Yeah. I noticed from outside looking in football, usually the second year after the ACL, the guy looks about normal.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, that's with multi-million dollar therapy and facilities and the best of the best, and probably heading off to Mexico for stem cells and whatever else these guys are
Right.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100% focus on
Yeah.
recovery.
Right. Right. Yeah. All day, every day. Um, So I'll link to everything we talk about in the show notes and stuff like that. I'll link to the Circus Center. If you guys are in the Phoenix area, you're traveling, you live here, I'd recommend come checking it out. I think Saturdays is a very accessible day. Check the schedule, make sure that they're open. But 2:00 starts open gym, open play, whichever way we call it nowadays. And it's donation based. And I think if you're interested in this, is a great accessible way to come in. Like I said earlier, I'd say 99.99% of people are just amazing. They would love to help you. They'd love to jump in. You see us doing crazy things, maybe we'll give you a try. Probably not. You got to work on those fundamentals, like Alicia said. Is there anything else you want to say, you want to link to, or anything like that for the people out there?
I would just say that I think starting any kind of circus discipline, whether it's partner acro, whether it's aerial arts, it can be intimidating. We get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I've never done athletics," or, "Oh, I just don't know. I'm not that in shape for it yet." That it's not just about being in shape and learning tricks. It's really a great alternative fitness.
Mhm.
So like just starting in our intro classes is going to build that strength, and it's going to be welcoming for anyone, any age, any skill level, any physical ability. There's a place to start at, and it can be scary to try something new, but I don't even know if I can name one person that hasn't enjoyed their first experience.
It is addicting, and I'll be a testament to that. I had a very serious shoulder dislocation playing football. It was literally out, and my shoulder was in my armpit. I had problems for years. I was young and stupid, and I didn't do my rehab. Strangely enough, acro fixed that. I have not one problem anymore. I have full range of mobility. I used to doing any type of overhead lifting. Eventually, my left arm would just give out, and I was like, "Why is this not working?"
Yeah.
Completely gone. I think I have something's wrong with my left knee. I broke my leg. That's pretty much gone from acro. So I'm not a doctor here, but maybe some of your injuries will kind of go away. Hey, the mobility stuff, the small tissue kind of work that you need for acro, the stability. I think
Yeah.
that nothing but help you in life.
Yeah, I agree. It's a well-rounded practice where you're really using stability, your fine motor skills, and your major muscle groups. So, as long as you don't jump in too fast, too crazy, it's a good way to be physically fit in a functional way, not just an aesthetic way.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to use my legs. That's what I keep hearing from
Yeah.
somebody. True.
hmm It's tricky. Those legs are tricky.
They are. Okay. On the social community show, I like to do a weekly challenge. And it could be about something we talked about here, or maybe something that you're into or passionate about. I'd like to give you the opportunity to issue the listeners this week's challenge.
Ooh, like anything I want, just
Anything you can
remember.
dream of.
Okay. I really like the ideal of, because this is a challenge for myself, about like being present a little bit more. I think it's so easy to get like to not be able to sit still, to always be on technology, to just not appreciate, the beauty of life. So I feel like a nice challenge is just like once a day this week, just take a moment. It can be 5 minutes, but like take in your surroundings, go through your five senses, and just kind of be like, okay, I'm outside or I'm in my office. Like, what do I hear? What do I smell? What do I see? Like, how does my body feel? And just take 5 minutes to like be present and check in with yourself.
And that's a beautiful challenge. Hey, take out your headphones too, people. I think we put those in a little too much.
Yes. I'm
I
gonna
love
pick on Brent. He has his headphones in even while he sleeps all night long, just listening to audiobooks. And I'm like, hi, I'm here too.
that's funny. I don't know if it's a Buddhist thing or something like that or whatever, but it's they say when you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's a great
Yeah. I
challenge.
love
Alicia,
it.
thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Congratulations on all the success and you've done with the Circus Center. From my perspective, I can see the turnaround. I see the people. I see the continued growth, and I wish you, more success and happiness in the future with all that.
Yeah, and thank you for you were on this journey from almost the start. I mean, we started teaching acro in a park, so acrobody was like our first real kind of class structure, and you were there and you've been with us the whole time. So thank you, and thank you for letting me share my story.
All right. Thank you very much, Alicia, for coming on and sharing all that wisdom. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you did enjoy this episode and you found some value, share it with these two other people. You can connect with us all week long on your favorite social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatnot, YouTube. We can watch this episode as well, or your favorite podcast player. For past episodes and links to everything we talk about here today, you can head over to thesocialchameleon.show. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and transforming into the person you want to become.